Oh. That's really proud of me. So, hello. My name is Christine Byrd, and if you haven't met yet, I'm Bryan's daughter. And if you can't tell the family resemblance, you might want to get your eyes checked after this, because it's there. Okay, my dad taught me so many lifelong skills and lessons in our 31 years together. When I was a baby, he would hold and dance with me while singing, "You are my pork chop pie. Nobody loves you more than I." And then I learned to walk and dance myself. And once I started talking, everything was me do. I don't know if he was scared or thrilled to have his only child look and act just like him. As a toddler, he would flip me upside down and over his shoulders if I asked for a piggyback ride. Now that I'm a parent, I find myself making up funny rhymes and wrestling with my own kids. My youngest even said, "I do" to everything at an early age. I hope my boys pass down this playful nature to their own kids. Then when I was in preschool during the wintertime, it escalated to tying our German Shepherd to a sled, hitting a baseball far into the field behind our house. He watched in delight as I clung on for dear life while the dog whipped me around to bring the ball back to him. It was great, and I always said, "Again, again." Except the one time when the sled flipped over and I hit my head on a patch of ice. So in true stubborn fashion, I went inside and put my bike helmet on and said, "Please do it again. Put my helmet on this time, please." Dad smiled, and he started hitting the baseball again until Duker Dog, his favorite dog of all time, got too tired. And maybe Dad's arm was tired too, but we all know he wouldn't use that as an excuse to stop having fun. Dad taught me how to ride a bike without training wheels when I was 3 years old. His methods of teaching were always out of the ordinary. I remember him walking me up 2 hills like this on a field and telling me just to ride down. So in trying my best not to fall, I forgot how to brake. So instead, the force of the neighbor's shed crashing into my face that stopped me really quick. His response was, "Use the brakes next time instead of a wall." Like I did that on purpose at 3 years old. When I was 5, Dad coached my soccer team till I was 9 years old. He would take me out to practice on the same field I learned how to ride that bike without training wheels. He wanted me to play goalie, so I did. And in hindsight, I believe the best part about me being goalie was he could drill me with soccer balls as hard as he could kick and say, "Why didn't you catch that? I kicked it right at you." Like hard. In the face. We had so many adventures during my adolescent years. He taught me not to fear snorkeling in the Atlantic and Caribbean Oceans. He found out the hard way not to let me drive ATVs and jet skis. And I taught him that I'm much better at mountain biking when there are no altitudes involved. My dad's family had a reunion in Wyoming when I was 15. And if you haven't caught on to the gist, I volunteered to go with him on any adventure just to spend time with him. His brother and sister planned to go on this guided mountain biking tour, or trip, I guess. I immediately was like, "I want to go." They all looked at me wide-eyed like, "Are you sure you can do this?" And I imagine riding a bike down a mountain can't be that hard, right? Like I already mastered riding bikes around New Jersey, and I could handle braking. So, so the 4 of us held our bikes. Me and Dad sat on the chairlift together up the ski lift to the top of the mountain, just holding on to the handlebars of the bikes. And fear was definitely settling in when I looked down, but I kept my composure. I quickly realized riding down a mountain involved a great deal of riding up the mountain too. Oh, and it was a really difficult mountain to stop going around the gravel curves. I had to take a few breaks during steep inclines to catch my breath while everybody just persevered ahead of me. When I stopped halfway up a steep incline, my dad sat next to me and waited for me to keep going. He told jokes and he pushed me to keep riding. The descent down was so treacherous that I fell repeatedly, and I just wanted to hold on to my bike and just roll down the whole entire mountain and just be on the done so I could be done with the mountain. But it was classic dad. He really didn't need to take, wasn't really waiting for me to take a break. He needed to take a break too, he just couldn't admit it. Like, it was so dad. And I didn't write down until much later. He loved going to the family farm in Louisiana. And when I was in high school, we'd ride ATVs and actually accidentally get as many vehicles as possible stuck in the mud in the process. Let's ride. I felt something tickling me. So I looked down and I saw a hairy tarantula like this big on my leg. And I started flailing my arms and legs while the quad was still in motion, crashing into a bunch of brush and trees. And he stops up and goes, "What did you do that for?" And like, there was a tarantula on my leg. And he asked if it bit me. And I said, "No." And he was like, "Okay, go this way." Like, I'm serious. Like, you can't make this stuff up. It's for real. I'm clumsy too, just like him. One time he was shooting and I stepped back on the Lift Bridge in Louisiana and I fell right into the hole. My whole leg just straight in the hole. He looks back at me and goes, "What did you do that for?" I was like, "Can you help me?" I think he really wanted to just leave me there for like a little bit and see like how long it took me to figure out how to get my entire leg out of the hole. Oh my goodness. Oh. Oh. Let's move on to the next page. After I started a family of my own, my dad was there having his 1-year-old grandson drive his boat and took my boys riding horses, snowmobiles, and all other like all-terrain vehicles. He put out a funny trail of eggs at Easter, reminiscent of my childhood months. His infamous kind outs and lesson posts have been passed down to my children. Here's Disney told Silas, "Don't do that," and Silas will do it anyway. That's my 6-year-old. One time my dad and I backhanded his belly at the exact same time and we both laughed and Dad was like, "Oh, double back." How he reacted to Silas's defiance is why I know my dad calmed down and was more gentle in his later years. My greatest wish is I am able to instill the values passed down to me by my father down to my boys. There's so much more he wanted to teach them, and I wanted more than anything for them to have the same understanding and adventurous bond with their people as I did with my dad. I am so grateful for the opportunity to have all of these many wonderful memories with my dad and truly trust he's a major part of my inner monologue. Everything I do good in life is because I'm thinking of my father. I will forever miss and love him so much. Who's going to make fun of all this stupid stuff I do myself? Christine. We will. And I can no longer respond. At least I have hair.
All of that. Yeah, really.
Sorry, I'm a teacher. I write stuff and it's off.
Hear that, I just tried to tell her, I said, "You're going to follow Christine." Right, thank you. So for those I don't know, my name is Phil Ebeling, and I was Bryan's boss. More importantly, I was Bryan's friend. And normally for those that do know me, I don't write my speeches now. Today I did, because I need a playbook to get through this. So just kind of bear with me as I probably stumble along the way. I'll do my best, and I'm going to do my best to stay on time too. Which for me and those that know me know that is needed. I was telling Caroline that as I was thinking about today, there was a quote. So for anybody that's familiar with Robin Williams, the actor, in the movie Good Will Hunting, his character has a quote that seemed appropriate today, and that is that, quote, "You'll have bad times, but that'll always wake you up to the good stuff that you weren't paying attention to." And as I thought about that today, I was writing my tribute to my good friend and colleague. I was reminded of that quote because what's funny is that when it comes to Bryan and me, probably Bryan and a lot of you, really didn't have bad times. You just didn't. But mostly you just remember the good stuff, right? And I will say this though, now that he's passed, I remember not only the good stuff, but I remember it with Christine Byrd. And that really helped me write the speech that I want to give today. Because although everything's clear and everything's good, it's just with incredible heavy heart that I talk to you today. Mainly because I realized maybe not unlike some of you, I didn't really get a chance to say about it. So today is my goal with my friend to say about it. I'm not going to lie to you, I'd give anything not to be here today. Not that I don't love seeing all of the people, frankly, that I haven't seen for far too long. But I'd give my left arm not to be here. I was certainly aware that Bryan was ill, but when Caroline actually called me on the day of his passing, I had that kind of annoying, ugly pit in my stomach. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Kind of that. I was thinking, like, how do I describe that? And I came up with, it hurts like heck. And I decided that in my case, it felt like indigestion wrapped in a ulcer.
Yeah. I think it's like your insides are eating your outside.
That's right. That's how I felt for like 2 weeks. I felt that way. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't even want to think about it. I didn't want to even kind of think about the feeling and what was happening, because every time I did, it just made me sad. Because I sat back and I was asking questions like, well, why did this happen? And then I started dwelling on, okay, when we talked last, what did we talk about? Right? And I'm here to tell you, I can't really remember, but I'm pretty sure we laughed the whole time. So when Robin Williams talks about the good stuff and the stuff you remember, when it comes to Bryan and me, that's a long list, right? So it's hard for me to be brief about it, but I'm going to try. I told Caroline, if she'll admit to it, when we talked about doing this, that I said I would do it, but it would probably take me hours to get through every story I have about Bryan. And I'm a guy, again, for those that know me, that knows I like to just kind of riff, right? I just talk and talk and talk. But the fact of the matter is, it takes a little time for somebody like me to tell all of you, those online, what Bryan really meant to me. So when I told Caroline, hey, can I have an hour? She goes, nah, I don't think so. Because see, for those that don't know, I've known Caroline actually longer than I know Bryan. And Caroline knows in my heart of hearts that if she'd give me an hour, I'd take it. Or more. So I'm going to work hard to get through this as quickly as I can and really still pay the respect and the tribute that Bryan is owed. So I forced myself to put my thoughts into kind of 5 different buckets about Bryan, kind of high level thematic. But of course, can't resist telling a few stories along the way. So I hope that's I can appreciate that. But let me start by telling you that Bryan was maybe the only guy I've ever known in my life that saw good in virtually everything. Never seen a guy like that before. And I want to start with that because I've talked with many of you today, those online, those here, about Bryan's passing. And there's one common theme that always comes up when you think about Bryan, and that is that Bryan never took anything too seriously. And I mean that as one of the greatest compliments I could pay anyone. Because Bryan was a guy who saw things for what they were, but focused on what could make them better. And I've learned from that, and I try to employ that technique in my own life. It's not easy. He made it easy. He made it seamless. And it's just something that means something to me because I learned that from him. Bryan, hands down, funniest guy ever. And that's saying something because I look around this room and I see a lot of screwballs that make me laugh. But Bryan really took the cake. So, quick story. Bryan and I used to travel a lot together. We go literally all over the world. One of the places we used to go a lot was Haifa, Israel. So Bryan and I made about half a dozen trips to Haifa together. And I was thinking, coming today, that Bryan and I, when we go to Haifa, we would travel from Tel Aviv. And we'd leave from JFK. And if any of you have ever had to customs of both JFK and Tel Aviv, trust me, you need that sense of humor that Bryan had. Because that is really, really hard. And I can still see him like this here right now. He and I would talk about that, and I would just get all worked up about this. And Bryan said, "Well, what are you going to do?" Right? Yes, that line's 49 people long, but yes, Israel, what do you mean? But once during a trip, I actually lost an electric toothbrush because I wasn't supposed to have batteries in my bag. Bryan thought that was absolutely the most fun. So another theme I was thinking about today, and it's one of the things I always think about with Bryan, is that Bryan had what he used to call the greatest closing speed. Did anybody ever have Bryan talking about closing speed? So it might have just been a thing that he and I joked about, but so a little bit of history. So Bryan started working for me in 2012. I knew him a lot longer than that. But at our very first official boss subordinate, if you will, one-on-one meeting together, we started talking about, of all things, employee performance reviews. Bryan had this strange infatuation with employee performance reviews. I don't even remember how we got on that topic, but he looked at me in that one-on-one, and I remember it like it happened a minute ago. He said, "Phil, I just want you to know that I have great closing speed." I'm sitting there going, "What the hell is that?" Right? So what I learned with Bryan is that it turns out that closing speed to Bryan went well beyond performance reviews, right? Although he was good at performance reviews, it really was a kind of a model for him, in my opinion. It extended into how he thought about doing his job, really even his place in this world, right? And what I mean by that is, he was never the fastest to get a task done, in my opinion. In fact, he actually tortured purpose, I'm sure, because he would wait till the absolute last minute to get things done. And by the way, that was performance reviews too. So for those that don't know this, he took such pride in performance reviews that he actually listed out his yearly accomplishments and objectives a percent of the time. So I would get Bryan's self-review, and it would be 9 pages long. I did 1% of this. I did 1% of that. And of course, it drove me nuts. Like, who does this?
Yeah, up to 100, right?
And he just tortured me, like I said. And he laughed. And then he just made it worse, and he knew it bothered me. He just kept doing it. But the bigger picture here is that closing speed was really just his reminder to me. It's like, I was the heavy. I was the guy that was taking things way too seriously. And it didn't matter if it was reviews or anything else we worked on. It just reminded me that you can't take any of what goes on in this little world that we share too seriously. Because life is short, and we're learning that, unfortunately, again today. He left me with the feeling that it's okay to live in the edge. This life is short. Another theme, Bryan could disarm even the toughest of them. Never seen somebody disarm tough conversations, tough people any better than this guy. So another quick story probably means more to those of us who worked together at St. Jude all those years, but I think it's worth sharing. So as I think everybody knows, we saw on the table over here, Bryan spent a lot of his formative life as a designer, innovator, creator of technologies to treat electrophysiology disorders. So for those that maybe aren't as familiar with atrial fibrillation, just an epidemic in our country, affects 40 million Americans. But I'm here to tell you that a lot of them live better lives today because of what they're flat 100%. And that alone is enough. It is a big testament to Bryan's legacy. But to me, it actually goes a little further than that, because Bryan used to tell me all the time he got most satisfaction when he was doing something instead of just the 50 points. He told me, he goes, in some ways, I'm the worst manager you could ever have, because I'd rather work with my people who do the job than just tell them what to do. So he put plans into action, right? And sure, his teams did a lot of really, really impressive things, but my experience with Bryan is it's happiest when his team puts it around his boat, his motorcycle. And in the case of his professional life, and I'm going to use this word intentionally, the jungle of electric electrophysiology. So for those that maybe haven't been in the electrophysiology lab, it's literally a jungle. Wires, cables, electrical boxes, crap everywhere, right? Like it's an electrician's dream and a fire marshal's nightmare. Right? And I once watched Bryan at a lab, with me standing there being the dummy I usually was, along with two physicians and a couple lab techs. He walked in, we were having trouble with our mapping system. He laid down on the floor, started. Never seen anything like it, right? This is why Bryan could disarm those characters, because the tremendous respect for what he could do. He's dove in, he was a doer, he was a tinkerer, he wanted to fix things. Docs don't like it when you start messing things. Except they didn't mind it when Bryan did it because they knew Bryan and they knew he could fix things. So normally they'd say, get the hell out, but they didn't because Bryan understood the language of heat, right? He understood the language of the great innovators. And so I stood there and had no idea what he was doing, but what I did know this is when he got up off the floor at work, that was enough. That was enough for me because he was really the master tinkerer. One last thought, and I'll get off the stage. So Bryan was bigger than life, 100%. You know, to me, this might be the most important thing I remember about Bryan. I'll share a quick story. I talked to you very recently about Bryan's passing, a former Chief Medical Executive. And those that know Bryan's history, Bryan came to by way of acquisition. He told me flat out, quote, when we bought EP Med Systems, the best thing that came out of that deal was Bryan. 100%. And I just thought, what a great quote, because, you know, I gave that statement some more thought, and I just think it's such a great quote because it clearly personifies for me Bryan's legacy. You see, many of you in your own way have told me the same thing. The best part of any project, meeting, life moment that you shared with Bryan was Bryan, right? Like, I'm here to tell you, he routinely sucked all the oxygen out of me. 100%. And nobody minded because it was just like, yeah, that's Bryan. That's who Bryan is. Man, did that guy have a wit. I mean, I tried to match wits with him for more years than I could remember, and I never wanted to argue with that guy. It was just crazy, right? Like, he could just badger whatever. I couldn't get anything past that guy, right? Like, we've all tried, but nobody's succeeded. It's amazing, right? The other thing that, and I'm reminded as I look at the room today, is that guys like Bryan attract only the best people. Look around. Look at who's here today, people that are online. Be bigger than life, take all the oxygen out of the room, guys. Attract the best people. Exhibit A is right here, Caroline. You know, Bryan and Caroline, quick story, hit the really part of the relationship for me. Bryan never let me forget that. Because when I heard they were engaged to be married, I was like shocked, like literally shocked. Like, how could this be that I didn't know about it? And for years, Bryan told me about that. He said, see, I'm always smart for you. I said, well, that's not about it. But it's part of his bigger than life mentality. Just another way to torture the kids. All right, so look, I'm going to stop there, but I'm going to leave you with this quick thought. Do not for a minute doubt that somewhere and somehow Bryan has entered the great beyond with great closing speed. And I guarantee you he is laughing at me right now. The fact that I put a tie on today for him, he's laughing somewhere mercilessly. So, look, I'd like to raise a glass to my friend, my colleague, Bryan. Cheers, gone, but never forgotten. Thank you.
Booty Butts, what are you doing? I gotta move this around the corner. Bryan is nicknames, right? Everybody just met Booty Butt. Where's Peeps? Peeps back here. Peeps is back here. Got Princess over here. So, quick aside before I start my review. Speaking of closing speed, seeing around the corner, remember last Christmas, he's running around, we're about ready to open gifts.
He's frantically running around wrapping a box. So he's frantically Christmas morning, we're not ready to open gifts. He's wrapping a box. And he brings it in, and it's this huge box. He said, this is your gift. Great. So time comes, I rip open that gift. I pull out my rope on my clock. And he said, yeah, your Christmas present just arrived like late yesterday. I didn't have time to wrap it or anything, so just now reach in the pocket. And I pulled out a tennis bracelet. So, closing speed. There you go. That's what you're everything. All right, so first of all, I did want to thank all of you, every single one of you, for being here, for listening online, and celebrating Bryan's 61 years together with us. The outpouring of love since we got sick with COVID, were hospitalized, been recovering, has truly meant a lot to me, for sure. My original post that I put online, LinkedIn, to share the GoFundMe with the public and made my public statement about what had happened, went viral and has over 43,000 views. We raised over $17,000 in his legacy, in his honor, for the American Heart Association, which is an organization that perpetuates his entire career. Everything he's invented, everything he worked for, is embodied with the American Heart Association. The Baca Museum as well, is inspiring the next generation of young inventors like Peeps and
Once we decide experiments in my
yeah, he's ripping apart markers and kinetic sand. And, oh, sorry, ripping apart in this. That's like a proper scientist. Good. But all of this, all these numbers and everything, Mr. Metrics, Mr. Down to the 1%. It's a very small measure of what I know he meant to the world, what he meant to medical device community, and to all of us here today. I did have the pleasure of being in Bryan's life only for the last 7 years, really, since I came back to St. Jude Medical. For 3 of those years, though, I did live with the highest honor of being his wife. Unquestionably, the last few years, they've been the best years of my life, as they should be when you are with your soulmate. Bryan and I did meet back in 2014, and in the summer of 2015, the following summer after I started, Phil said, hey, you guys got to get on a plane. Steph is here. She was on that plane. We go over to London together for our first international trip to EP physician roundtable. We're talking to a bunch of doctors. We just had to be there in the morning as R&D slugs like we are. So we turned it over to sales and marketing to do the rest of the biz. And everybody else is going to go back to their hotel room and do work, because that's what we do, right? Now we're on a business trip with Caroline. So we're all rounding it up, and we're all going to go out. And we did a double-decker bus tour. We went to dinner in a wine cellar that Bryan convinced us all was a medieval sewer pipe. Because I leaned back in my chair and I touched my head to the wall and said, that wall's just uninstalled the shit. But the very special thing, I took everybody up and I had timed it just so we could get on the London Eye, go up in the daytime, up at the top when the lights of the city turned on, it became dusk, and we came back down with the lights. There are pictures on the slideshow here of Steph, Katie, myself, and Bryan on the London Eye together. So, on our last night in London, Bryan and I were standing outside a hotel room on street corner waiting for Steph and Katie, once again, We got beers to drink. We're waiting on these guys. But we're waiting. And sure enough, this rickshaw, you know, like a bicyclist thing, rolls up, and these scantily clad drone Londoners spill out onto the ground right in front of his feet. And they scoop themselves up and look straight at him and they go, hey, do you know where heaven is? And he turned and looked at me with the big bug eyes, you know, like the, oh, help me. Yes. And I just smiled. I said, I think I know where heaven is. And he's like, oh no, this is not going to be good. I know where heaven is. Oh, the alleyway right down there, this nightclub right around the corner called Heaven. And he just fell on the floor laughing. He thought that was so funny that I knew where heaven was down around the corner. So we had a good laugh about the whole thing. Steph and Katie show up. That's good. We go get our beers. We go fly home. But that whole exchange right there on the street, he never forgot that. That was hands down one of the best things that ever happened to him on an international trip. And little did either of us know during that trip, we were in different stages of divorce during that time. And when Bryan found out much later after that trip that I was struggling with things that he privately struggled with and never told a soul about, he was immediately there to help me through things. And that's exactly how he was. And I know there are people in this room, in times of need, in times of your biggest struggle in life, Bryan was the one there to help you out of the jam in any way possible. So as we got to know each other more personally, we figured out that like we're the same. And we became inseparable. We showed each other nothing but admiration and respect. We shared the same values and we trusted each other completely. Talk about disarming, you know, how wound up I did about everything because I was the competition girl who was like, Steph, Rick, who's the first to get your reviews done? Me, let's go, you know. That. So I was on the other spectrum versus Mr. Closer. But he could calm my anxiety in absolute peace. That's what it is. He would stand beside me and support anything I was passionate about. We laughed constantly, and we loved each other. Over these past 5 years as a couple, we took every opportunity we could to travel and create stories together. We laid on the beach in Cancun. We connected with his love of the water in Amsterdam. It's all the museums. We rode a Harley to the Grand Canyon, Sedona, Tombstone. And yes, apparently I was the unnamed girlfriend at St. Jude that he would talk about. And not tell anybody. No one knew that we were dating until he was ready to say so, and that was when we were engaged. We took the kids to Orlando and the Fort Keys. We spent time in North Carolina with the family, rented cabins. We went to the Louisiana farm. We shot guns in the Ozarks with my family. And our last international trip was over Thanksgiving in 2019 down to Sao Paulo, Brazil. And when COVID stopped our adventures and our travels, it was no big thing to him, right? That's just another problem we're not going to get worked up about. We're just going to go buy 100 acres in Wisconsin. And he went out there and found a place on ATV and snowmobile trails and put an offer in without telling me, without me ever seeing it. I came home and said, I bought this place. You'll see it in a few weeks. And of course, it's heaven on. So we had, between that cabin and the boat, still on the Mississippi, St. Croix, and the motorcycles, and the open road, we had endless opportunities to make more memories. But my favorite trip of all time with Bryan, my favorite trip, was to Munich, Germany, on my 40th birthday to visit the Christmas markets in Germany. It's a lifelong dream of mine. Gotta go see the Christmas markets in Germany. And it was there he proposed to me, using a PowerPoint presentation. Classic, right? Together PowerPoint presentation. And he made me read it. Only because that moment was the only time in my entire life I saw his voice shake and he was nervous. And he couldn't tell me vocally what he wanted to tell me. He did it in a PowerPoint, I read it. And my answer was yes. So we got married in a venue very similar to this, but we were surrounded by wine instead of his favorite food. And he wanted our wedding to be really intimate, filled with love and, of course, fun. And Mr. Funny, what does he do? Hires a comedian to marry us. So, we stood in front of some of you in this room and got married while our pastor chugged a beer to calm his nerves at the beginning of the ceremony, shot the kids with Nerf guns, and he made everyone in the room stand up and hug each other. You know, that was how we got married. And no one thought that was real. It took a good, 20 minutes in, 15 minutes in the ceremony, and it was like, this joke, what is happening? Carolyn's gonna kill this guy. But you see, Bryan loved to have Nerf wars with both my kids, Will and Annie, and when they were younger, and that was his way of showing love and bonding with them, was to wrestle. Just like stick or snake with Peeps or Gavin. Is it a stick or snake?
You got a snake either way.
It's a snake.
It doesn't matter if it's snake.
And Peepaw timeouts. The famous Peepaw timeouts for silence. Silence. Why do you love yourself so much? You know, the bear hug. Twizzles. Those are all the ways that he showed love. He loved that way. Very physically loved. But
Who's hands-on?
Hands
That's what you're trying to say.
But I'll tell you what, the vows, for those of you who were there that day, there was a lot of inside jokes in our wedding. I know a lot of people didn't understand them. But, you know, now that you've all gotten to know, especially my family got to know Bryan and figured out he was mostly joking. And he seemed very serious about those things. He's joking. But the vows we made together on our wedding day demonstrated a love that will always be there for me as long as I live. And I believe he fulfilled and I fulfilled our vows together. We loved each other the best we could, and it was always the best when we were together. We were always faithful, for richer or poor, or in Bryan's words, even richer. Yeah, there was no, going backwards. Horrible. He calmly protected us. Christine, my kids, my family. When times got hard, he protected us, whether we knew it or not, or recognized it or not.
Whether he wanted to or not.
Whether he wanted to or not, he did. I never whined when it snowed or rained on us on the motorcycle. Because like Christine said, it was an adventure and it was my time. I was never going to whine. I loved and cared for him when he was sick. Every second, even when I was deathly ill myself. And if I'm ever asked on the streets of London or anywhere where heaven is, the answer will always be, just as it was on our wedding day, Lift Bridge. None of us can understand God's plans. We only live a very short time here on earth. But we must move forward and make the absolute best of every single day we have left here, just as he did every day. So what would he say right now to us if he were saying? Do what makes you happy and have fun. Try anything and everything in life at least once. If after 3 times it's no good, move on. Try something else. Listen and be humble and learn from one another. Experiences make you who you are. So leave your legacy with great stories and great memories. Stay positive, because a little bit of humor can totally change your outlook. And use your talents and gifts to fiercely love and care for those around you. What I have to say to Bryan today, I love you, honey. And I know you're going to be here with me and Christine and the family who need you most. And I know where heaven is, and I know how to get there, and I know you're there. So say the chorus for me.
And you folks, you had it rough. I have Uncle Barry Walters. You think you had it rough? I knew Bryan for 61 years. I don't think there's anybody here who would offer that. I have some greetings I would like to start with in just a moment, if you would. First of all, Bryan's father, Dr. Charles Byrd, was on the Zoom call with us, with his wife Nancy. So hello, Doc. My brother is on the Zoom call, Tommy Walters. Hello, bro. We have sister and brother somewhere out there who are in the audience, Shannon, and there's Kevin. Kevin at the back, Shannon there. Okay, so we have quite a good representation from the family. I am a Bible study teacher. They thought you needed one of these here. So they have asked me to close by reading a selection that the family selected and to close with prayer. I'm honored to do that. And even though I normally get 1 hour to teach every Sunday, Caroline gave me 10 minutes. So I'm going to stick to 10 minutes. And then when I conclude, we're done. We have about 2 hours, I believe, after that to enjoy this facility. The one story I have, everybody's told these great stories. You need an uncle to tell you a story that is a little bit different. You see, Bryan's mother, of course, my sister, Linda Byrd Walters, was a perfectionist classical pianist, in case you didn't know that. She taught and performed at collegiate level for decades. Unfortunately, Bryan and I, 11 years difference. She was a much older sister, thank you. And so we both had this dubious task of having to take piano lessons with Linda Walters Byrd. Now, Bryan and I have accomplished, in our lives, we accomplished a lot of things, but we were total failures as pianists. I like to tell this story. Bryan agreed every time I told him that if I approach the piano these days, I can go and I kind of do that. Well, thank you, Shannon. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. That means that I could not do what she was asking me to do. Now, 90-year-old only, at the piano somewhere in there. Because she would take the dust cover on the piano, and she didn't like what you were doing, she'd slam it. Okay? You had to be really fast in order to do this. So if there's one thing that Bryan and I have in common is that we laughed about that forever. That was our standard life of being total failures as pianists. But here's the good news. Bryan, first of all, we both played in high school bands, so there's some modicum of musical talent. And we took it beyond that. Bryan was a very good classical rock guitarist. Did you know that? He was a good classical rock guitarist. I supported, however, with sympathy. I kind of went pure sympathy. So, my answer back to Linda, our sister, would be, we were not failures. We were just late bloomers. We got there. We showed some musical talent, and that came through the Walter side of the family. So it's my honor to read a passage of scripture found in Psalm 23. I have taught this many times in my Sunday school class. There is a story behind this psalm that you might not know. I'd like to just spend just a minute sharing this story with you. First of all, this is written by an author in a book called The Stories Behind the Psalms. The author Dale Kane provides us this background information. And this background information is actually found in 1 Samuel 30. In it, you will find that there was a 29-year-old former shepherd boy named David who was being hunted by King Saul. And King Saul wanted to kill him. He was jealous of him. He just wanted him out of the way, so he kept trying to hunt him down and kill him. David, this 29-year-old, with his army, he had an army of about 600 men, and they went to what was considered the sanctuary city. They took their wives, their children, they took other relatives to a sanctuary city named Ziklag. I always loved that name. And they then left all the family there while David and his 600 men went out to fight battles on behalf of the king of the Philistines. You didn't know that. And so they did. They fought the battles for about 16 months. And then they had an occasion, a little break to go back. So David and his 600 warriors, or the ones that were left at least, went back to the sanctuary city to see their families. We found the city totally burned down and destroyed. Their wives and their children and their family were all taken into captivity. And they didn't know where, of course, by an invading army that came from somewhere. And all of this was, what made this even worse is that David looked at his men and they could not fathom what was going on. There's one verse in 1 Samuel 30, verse 4, I believe it is, it says, David and his army, warriors, left until it was weak. So what had happened? Well, they left the city unprotected because they thought it was truly a sanctuary city, but it did not hold up to this invasion. This was the background city for when David actually wrote Psalm 23. So listen to the words of Psalm 23. It's in this condition that all alone and emotionally spent, wrote these words. To read this from a Living Bible translation. Those of us that know Lily, this is her Bible, and I always take it for these occasions to read out of it. She talks so much about this particular passage that it's one of about 6 or 7 that she wrote in her volume from the Bible. She was a sweet and godly person. Psalm 23, man, this is a Living Bible. It's a little bit different version than you read before, perhaps. Psalm 23 out of the Living Bible says, because the Lord is my shepherd, I have everything I need. He lets me rest in the meadow grass and leads me beside the quiet streams. He restores my failing health. He helps me do what honors him the most. Even when walking through the dark valley of the dead, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me, guarding, guiding all the way. Those verses look back at David's life as a shepherd. Everything that all the imagery there is about his times growing up as a shepherd boy. But the scene changes in verse 5. In verse 5, the scene goes to a present time. Verse 5 says, you provide delicious food for me in the presence of my enemies. You have welcomed me as your guest. Blessings overflow. But then the scene changes again, and now it's a forward-looking scene. Verse 6 says, your goodness and unfailing kindness shall be with me all of my life, and afterwards I will live with you forever. That background gives you a little more understanding about this song and the importance of the time that he wrote that. Family has asked me to close with a prayer. I'm delighted to do. You have heard the term serenity prayer, and I thought it was a little curious when I was family asked me to read this, because it is actually the first 4 verses that you know is used as a AA and a 12-step model. I thought, well, this is unique, in case you where you are. But do you know the rest of the song, the rest of this prayer? This is the original full version of it. It's written by an American Protestant theologian. His name was Reinhold Niebuhr, N-E-I-B-U-H-R. His family had immigrated before he was born from Germany, and he actually wrote this around 31 or 32. He's looking back at the time when the Nazis were taking over Germany. He had many relatives and friends still there. That's when he wrote this prayer. So meditate with me here in just a moment. It's short and sweet, but listen to the words and how they apply to Bryan's life. The original version by Reinhold Niebuhr. God, give us grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed. Courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next life. Amen. This concludes the formal part of the service. I always believing that the best part of a service like this is when you share with the family your memories of Bryan. So for approximately 2 hours, this place is reserved for you to just do that and certainly help yourself. But share with Shannon and the family and the rest that are, Kevin, the rest that are here, your memories of Bryan. You're dismissed to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.